Good morning, and wait a minute. I think I'm a bit overdressed for this. Good morning. Welcome to Grace Technologies webinar on understanding PPE requirements in accordance with NFPA 70E. I'm Charles Miller. I'm out of Nashville, Tennessee. And of course, since we're talking about PPE, I figured I'd go ahead and put on a little bit. And in fact, this face covering is arc rated. This is I just got this last week or so. Bulwark. This is arc rated face covering. It is rated 6.1 calories per square centimeter. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I have a lot to cover today, and I'm sure you probably will have some questions and stuff that we'll get to probably in the end of the webinar. There was one right off the bat about will the slides be available. The slides won't, but I will make sure Grace has a PDF of the presentation today. So you'll have access to the PDF. All right, what we're covering today is the 2021 edition of NFPA 70E. NFPA 70E is electrical safety in the workplace. It's very similar to OSHA's electrical safety requirements. This document has been out for a number of years now. This document is updated and revised every 3 years. This new 2021 edition just came out back in probably mid-September, and it is similar in the way that it looks and the way that it's revised, similar to the National Electrical Code. The National Electrical Code is on a 3-year revision cycle and has been for a number of years, and 70E is now on a 3-year revision cycle, and it follows the year after the National Electrical Code. All right, so what is the purpose of 70E? It's from NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. NFPA has over 300 codes, recommended practices, and standards, which NFPA 70E is a standard. Well, the purpose of 70E is to provide a practical, safe working area for employees relative to hazards arising from using electricity. The National Electrical Code is an installation code. It is for, it gives us requirements and codes for installing electrical conductors and materials. Once it is all installed, NFPA 70E takes over, and it gives us rules and regulations and stipulations to keep us safe in the workplace. Now, this 70E is not that large of a document. There are a lot of requirements in it. This webinar today is just a very small portion of a topic in 70E, and so we are by no means covering all of the PPE requirements in 70E. I'll cover a lot of material in the next 45 minutes to an hour and show you what is in 70E that's related to PPE. All right, in 8 months, a year ago or so, when I would say PPE for the first time, I would explain what PPE is. Personal protective equipment. Since the pandemic, I have no reason to explain PPE ever again because we have heard so much about PPE for the last 8 or 9, 10 months now that I think everybody in the country and probably everybody in the world knows what PPE is. 70E, and in this section 130.7a, if you'll, in the lower left part of the slide, I give you the reference number where this comes out of 70E. And this, again, this is all updated to the 2021 edition. employees exposed to electrical hazards when that risk associated with the hazard hasn't been adequately reduced by the applicable electrical installation requirements shall be provided, who will be provided? Employees shall be provided with, and they shall use protective equipment that is designed and constructed for the specific parts of the body to be protected and for the work to be performed. Now, what are we looking at with PPE? Well, we have a couple of dangers that we have to observe, a couple of things we have to think about in electrical. And one is shock, one is arc flash. We're going to cover both of these today. Just remember, we've got arc flash we're dealing with at one point, shock at another point. And we've got to look at both of them, make sure both are covered, not just one or the other. Protective clothing and equipment has to have a rating equal to or higher than the prospective incident energy exposure. This is a friend of mine, Terry Becker in Canada, showing this Oberon suit. Arc flash PPE in 130.5. So let's talk about arc flash first, and then we'll talk about shock. And in determining what we need to wear, in a few minutes, well, right here, we're going to talk about there's a couple of things that can be done. And in fact, it says in 130.5F, one of the following methods have to be used for selection of arc flash PPE. Number one, the incident energy analysis method in accordance with 130.5G. All right, that's when a company or facility either does it in-house or has someone come in and they'll do an arc flash analysis and they'll put labels on equipment. And you can look in 70E to find out which equipment is required. And it's equipment that's likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized. It doesn't apply to dwellings. And so if a facility has labels, then electricians, maintenance personnel, technicians, then in order to determine what they need to wear as far as arc rated PPE, they'll look at the label. Number two, the arc flash PPE category in accordance with 130.7C15. We're going to look at that one in this webinar. Either method is permitted, but not both would be permitted on the same piece of equipment. In other words, if an electrician is out there and they see a label on the equipment and they say, oh, I don't like this arc flash boundary. I don't like the amount of incident energy that's shown on this label. I'm going to go to the table in 70E and see if I can get a lower category rating than what the label says. You can't do that. It's either one or the other. Instead of performing an incident energy analysis, it is permissible to use the arc flash PPE category tables in 70E if you're meeting the parameters. We'll talk about those. The estimated maximum available fault current, the maximum fault clearing times, and the minimum working distance for various AC equipment types or classifications are listed in table 130.7 C15A. And we'll see these tables in a few minutes. All right, so this says, well, you can use the tables that are in 70E, but in using them, you have to be within the parameters. Well, what are the parameters? Well, the power system's greater than the estimated available fault current. If you've got that, if your power system if your equipment is greater than the maximum available fault current, you can't use the table. If your power system has a clearing time, a maximum fault clearing time that's longer than the ones that are shown in the table, you can't use the table. if you are going to be doing a task that is less than the minimum working distance, and most of the working distances in the table, well, for panel boards would be 18 inches. That means if you're, and what that, the working distance is, if you've got a set of test leads on a voltage detector on a test instrument, and you're doing voltage reading, and where the live electrical is compared to your body typically is about 18 inches, and that's why for a lot of equipment the working distance is 18 inches. If it's a piece of switch gear, it may be 24, 30, or 36 inches as far as deep inside that cabinet. Also, if the task, in using the tables, we have to look for the task that we're going to be doing in front of live electrical or potentially live electrical equipment. If the task is not listed, then we have to, then we can't use the table. We would have to have an arc flash analysis performed on the equipment. All right, so first use table 130.5C to see if an arc flash PPE is required. So this first table will give us, we'll look at this and say, okay, do we need arc rated PPE? If so, we'll go to the next table and the next and the next. All right, so next, if the arc flash PPE is required, use table 130.7C15A for alternating current systems, or table 130.7C15B for direct current systems to determine the arc flash PPE category. Finally, use table 130.7C15C to determine the required PPE for the task. All right, so let's look at some of these. This is table 130.5C. This gives us a task that we are to look at this table, and it has, it goes, of course, beyond what I've got shown up on the screen, but this is the top part of this. So you've got the task on the left side, and next to the far right, you've got equipment conditions, and then in the far right, you've got likelihood of occurrence. Well, if the likelihood of occurrence is no, then no arc rated PPE is required, arc flash PPE. If it is yes, then yes, arc flash PPE is required. For example, looking on the upper left, the very first one at the top, reading a panel meter while operating a meter switch. All right, so you've got a piece of switch gear. It's all closed up. You've got a display on the front that you can punch in numbers or punch in and find the information that you want. You want current on phase A, current on phase C. You want total kVA, total kW. You want all of this information. The equipment is all closed up. You're in front of it just punching in a number or just punching in information that you're trying to get. So what this means is what the likelihood of occurrence is no. That means you do not have to be wearing arc flash or arc rated PPE when you're doing the first items that are on the list. And so let's look down to the next group. For AC systems, work on energized electrical conductors and circuit parts, including voltage testing. We'll come back to this one in a few minutes. The second line item in that second block there is new to the 2021 edition. It says operation of a circuit breaker or switch the first time after installation or completion of maintenance in the equipment. All right, so you install a brand new panel board. The first time you turn it on, you see, okay, well, let's see, that line says operation of a circuit breaker or switch first time after installation. And this could just even be a circuit, one circuit, single pole, double pole, or three pole breaker. What this is saying is first time you turn that on after it's installed, you look over on the right, likelihood of occurrence, yes. Well, what does that mean? That means there is a likelihood that something could happen. So at that point, you do have to wear arc rated PPE just to turn it on. Well, what if the panel cover is closed up? What if there's nothing, no live parts exposed? Well, this one's new to the 2021, this doesn't base it on the panel cover being open. This just says it's just turning it on or off. This is a pretty big new addition to the 2021. And then going on down the page, then we've got the equipment conditions. And remember, in the last slide, we saw equipment condition any, and now it says equipment condition, we have normal and abnormal. And so we've got like the first one in the normal column, the normal row, operation of a circuit breaker, switch, contactor, or starter. If the equipment is in normal operating condition, likelihood of occurrence is no. That means no arc-rated PPE is required. And so but this is normal operation of equipment. We're going to, another slide here, we're going to talk about what is normal operation of a circuit breaker, switch, contactor, or starter. We're going to look at that. Several cycles back, there used to be a category 0. Right now we have category 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, actually, at one point we had category 2 and 2 star or 2 asterisk, but back several cycles back, we used to have a category 0. Category 0 was not, you had to wear clothing or shirts and pants of a certain material weight, like like blue jeans and maybe a heavy duty denim shirt or a work shirt, but it did not have to be arc rated. Well, the committee got rid of category 0, and that's when they put in, all right, if the equipment is in normal operating condition, you do this. No arc rated PPE is required. Well, before, just to turn on a circuit breaker, switch, contactor, or starter, whoever was operating that had to be wearing long sleeve shirt. They couldn't be out there in a t-shirt. They had to be wearing long sleeve shirt. It didn't have to be arc rated, but I thought this was a great addition when they put this in normal operating condition and abnormal operating condition. And so now just turning a breaker on, a switch, contactor, or starter, again, not after it's first installed, because we do have a line item above that. Now we do have to wear arc rated PPE. All right, so what is normal operating condition? And these are the conditions. A normal operating condition exists when all of the following conditions are satisfied. The equipment is properly installed. The equipment is properly maintained. The equipment is used in accordance with instructions included in the listing and labeling and in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. All right, for us guys that are in the webinar today, I know, and you probably know as well, we have a hard time reading instructions, right? So, and much less complying with them. Sometimes we don't even like reading the instructions. But anyway, that's what's required for the equipment to be in normal operating condition. Number 4, the equipment doors are closed and secured. All equipment covers are in place and secured. And number 4, the doors have to be closed and secured. I teach a lot of live seminars out there, and I've had questions come up here and there when this first came out, and someone would say, well, if the panel cover is closed to the breaker box, the panel board, I can't turn the breaker on anyway. That's not the door it's talking about. The door, like the door for a safety switch or a disconnect switch, that would have to be closed and secured. If you've got an industrial control panel, that door would have to be closed and secured. Not the door, the outside door to the breaker box. By just opening that outside door, it exposes the breakers, but it does not expose any conductors, circuit or live parts of conductors or circuit parts. Number 6, there is no evidence of impending failure. This is a big one. We'll talk about that in a couple of slides from now. Let's talk about the first couple of them. The phrase properly installed means that the equipment is installed in accordance with applicable industry codes and standards and the manufacturer's instructions. Again, it has to be read and properly installed if would have to installed in accordance with the National Electrical Code would be a good example. The phrase properly maintained means that the equipment has been maintained in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations and applicable industry codes and standards. And so this, you can, not all pieces of equipment have maintenance or recommended maintenance requirements. Like for example, a plain panelboard, plain breaker does not have any type of manufacturer's recommendations as far as testing or anything. This last item here, the phrase evidence of impending failure means that there is evidence such as arcing, overheating, loose or bound equipment parts, visible damage, or deterioration. I was teaching in Lansing, Michigan a few years ago, and they showed me this fuse block that came out of a piece of equipment. I'm not sure exactly what it came out of, but looking at that, is there evidence of impending failure with that fuse block? And the top conductors were just as bad as the lower ones here. And the answer, of course, is yes. There is evidence of impending failure. In fact, the conductors heated up so much that it melted insulation off. You see the one on the left? Well, the one in the center must have melted the insulation back far enough that they replaced that conductor with probably something they had handy. They replaced it with two conductors. Now, the National Electrical Code allows us to parallel conductors, but there are certain requirements that we have to meet in order to parallel conductors. And we're not allowed to put two conductors under one lug. All right, so there's some panel boards out there that for the ground, the equipment ground, that they, in their instructions that say you are allowed to put two number 12s or number 10s or 14s in one hole. And that's the only time I know about that you're ever allowed to put two conductors in one hole under one lug like this. So we know that's a code violation. Plus they would all, well, the minimum size you can parallel is 1/0. That does not look like a 1/0. Also, all of the conductors would have to be the same, paralleled the same. So anyway, this is absolutely evidence of impending failure. Someone asked in a class, well, how do you know this is in there? Well, you don't until you open the piece of equipment up, like a disconnect or an industrial control panel. Once you know that it's there, though, that equipment is in abnormal operation. What that means is, in order to turn this equipment on or off, even with the door closed, you have to be suited up or you have to be wearing arc flash PPE just to turn it on or off if you know that this equipment that there is evidence of impending failure. All right, table 130.7 C15A. This table gives us the information, like the top one here, panel boards or other equipment rated 240 volts and below. The next line is greater than 240 up to 600 volts. There are parameters this is the table that has the parameters in it. It has available fault current, maximum available fault current, and the top two is 25,000 amps, 25 KA available fault current. It has a clearing time, a maximum clearing time of 0.03 second or 2 cycles. And this also is showing the working distance of 18 inches. So if your parameters are not within those limits, using these tables are not permitted. When arc flash PPE is required, arc flash PPE and the arc flash PPE category is known, use table 130.7 C15C to determine the required PPE for the task. All right, this is category 1. It gives us information in this you have to wear arc-rated long sleeve shirt and pants, or arc-rated coverall, arc-rated face shield. There's a footnote with that, or arc-rated arc flash suit hood. This is category 1. The minimum arc rating for a category 1 is 4 calories per square centimeter. So the minimum arc rating for category 1 is 4 calories. There were some changes in the 2021 edition. You can see I've highlighted those, and I put the 2021 emblem on there and a symbol that. All right, so in this one and all the 4 categories, they added high visibility apparel along with arc rated jacket, parka, rainwear, or hard hat liner. The committee added, and I'm saying I am on the 70E committee. I'm a principal member on the committee, so I guess I should say we added. I just typically say they added, though, especially when, I mean, this is not bad, this is fine, but sometimes if something is a little controversial, I'll usually say they instead of we, but it's still we added. On the right side, we added arc-rated gloves or rubber insulating gloves with leather protectors after heavy-duty leather gloves. Now this did not change from the previous edition. It's just showing a bit more information on it now that we didn't have before. And all right, so let's work a problem. Let's do one of the problem here. The task is perform voltage testing on a 200 ampere 3-phase 480Y 277 volt panel board. The available fault current I'm giving you is 21.5 Ka. The clearing time is 0.03 second. All right. You may not be familiar with my work. I've got a book that I wrote and illustrated. The first edition was 1999, called Illustrated Guide to the National Electrical Code. For 19 years, I wrote and illustrated a column in Electrical Contractor magazine called The Code in Focus. Since I do my own illustrations, I put my own brand on the illustrations typically that I draw. If you'll notice the panel board, you've heard of square D, right? Well, look at this marking on this panel board. It's a square M. It is the Miller brand panel board. It is the Cadillac of equipment. This is the best stuff out there. The square M, the Miller brand. All right, so let's look at our problem. I'm giving you the information that it is a 480 volt 3-phase panel board, and you're going, well, I knew that because it has brown, orange, and yellow and gray. Teaching in class, even if I'm teaching electrical safety instead of National Electrical Code, I'll ask students in the class, what is the required colors that conductors have to be marked for 12208 volt 3-phase systems? And they'll say black, red, blue. And I say, what grounded conductor? They'll say white. And I said, okay, what are the required colors for 480 277 volt Y system of a 3-phase 4-wire system? And they'll say brown, orange, yellow. And I say the grounded conductor, they'll say gray. Say, well, no, that's not correct. And they'll look at me like, what? And because my question is, what are the required colors in accordance with the National Electrical Code? These are industry standard colors. Everywhere you go in the US are not going to have these colors. Now, the National Electrical Code does have some colors that are required, like if it's a 3-phase 4-wire Delta high leg system, that high leg has to be color coded orange. There's other colors that are used out there. There used to be colors for heater leads, and they had to be color coded. Well, a couple of editions back, they were taken out of the National Electrical Code. That's no longer a requirement. There was, if you have an intrinsically safe system in a hazardous classified location, and those intrinsically safe system, those conductors have to be blue. If you use blue for intrinsically safe system, you can't use blue anywhere else. And so there are color coding requirements, but as far as 12208 or 277-480, no, those are not required colors. Anyway, we've got a 480 volt. That's what it's what we need to think about and keep in mind. I'm giving you the fault current, I'm giving you the clearing time, or else we're not going to be able to use the tables. Well, okay, so now my question is PPE required? Arc flash PPE, is it required? Now we're going to look on the table, we're going to find this, but think about this. If I'm asking you, do you think arc flash or arc rated PPE is going to be required? You've got the panel board open. You're going to be doing voltage testing, so that means there are energized conductors and circuit parts. And if I were to ask everybody right now and show a hand or anything, everybody's going to say, yes, you got to wear arc rated or arc flash PPE. So let's look at this. Now, the meter here, that I didn't draw that. It's actually a picture of Fluke's T6-1000. If you haven't checked into that, if you're not familiar with that, I highly recommend looking at that, because this T6-1000, it reads voltage. It has leads on it, so of course it'll read voltage. It reads current in the jaw at the top. In fact, if you're thinking amp probes, oh, that's got to have a jaw at the top that closes. Well, this one doesn't have to close. So it reads voltage and it reads current, but it also reads voltage through that jaw at the top, through that opening at the top, without using leads. And so this particular voltage detector, this test instrument, will read voltage and current at the same time. And so if you're interested in that, check out Fluke's website for this. I've got one of their meters. I've got this meter. It is a great meter. Now I don't sell these. So I'm not promoting. Well, I am promoting, but I'm not promoting so that I can sell you something. Fluke and Oberon and OEL and these companies and Bulwark, they are great working with me so to send me products that I can take when I'm doing seminars or hold up and show when I'm doing webinars. There's some wonderful products out there. All right, so let's go back to our question. We're going to do voltage testing on a 480 volt panel. Do we need arc rated PPE? Well, table 130.5C for AC systems work on energized electrical conductors and circuit parts, including voltage testing. All right, voltage testing, well, the equipment condition, it doesn't matter, any condition, likelihood of occurrence, yes, arc rated or arc flash PPE is required. You knew this, I didn't have to tell you this, but anyways, we checked it out on the table. Yes, arc flash PPE is required. Yes. Next, check to see if the equipment is listed in table 130.7C15A. If the equipment is listed, we have to check the parameters. All right, so the panel board, the second row, panel board or other equipment rated greater than 240, because our panel board is 480, up to 600. All right, I gave you the available fault current at 21.5 KA. The maximum is 25. Check, we're good there. The clearing time is 0.03 second. Check, that's exactly our maximum. And then the working distance I gave you is 18 inches for working distance. Therefore, yes, we can use this table. Now we find the arc flash PPE category. It is category 2, arc flash PPE category 2. Then we find the arc flash boundary, go a little bit further. It is 3 feet. Finally, we look at table 130.7C15C to find the required clothing and equipment. Category 2 is what we have to have. So we look at PPE Category 2. This is mostly the same as what we looked at with Category 1, except the minimum arc rating of Category 2 is 8. There's some footnotes with that table. Footnote A, in fact, let's go back. Footnote A is at that top line after a minimum arc rating of 8 calories per square centimeter, and then going on down, we've got arc rated arc flash suit hood or arc rated face shield, and so this is the first footnote is the arc rating, and that is defined in Article 100. And B is face shields are to have a wraparound guarding to protect not only the face, but also the forehead, ears, and neck, or alternatively, we could use an arc flash suit hood instead of the arc rated face shield and possibly the arc rated balaclava. One of the things that I do when or I offer to clients when I'm doing training is to follow that up either in the same day or the next day with hands-on training. This was training that I did almost 2 years ago in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, which is just a little outside of Providence, Rhode Island. This was for the water company in Pawtucket that Suez runs and operates that water company. All right, instead of using arc rated arc flash suit hood, it is permissible to use arc rated face shield with an arc rated balaclava in a Category 2 location. The minimum arc rating of clothing, remember in a Category 2 on that last slide, was 8 calories, or the slide before the last one. This is an arc rated balaclava. This has an arc rating of 14 calories per square centimeter. This is my stepson, and he was kind enough to model this arc rated balaclava so I could get a picture of this. And I don't know if you're familiar with Ugly's. You're probably familiar with Ugly's electrical reference. This is Ugly's electrical NFPA 70E and electrical safety Ugly's book. Now, I didn't write this, but the publisher learned from their mistake and they hired me to do the updates. In fact, I'm way behind on updating the new Ugly's for the 2021 edition. If you're familiar with the Ugly's electrical reference that has been out for years, this book, again, I didn't write it. And in fact, I had the Ugly's electrical reference in 1978 when I was in electrical apprenticeship school. And this past fall, Jones and Bartlett asked me to be the one to update the Ugly's electrical reference, and so up to the 2021 edition of the National Electrical Code. And I did put that on LinkedIn a year or so ago, and it was a huge honor to be asked to do the update and then have my name on the front cover. Although I didn't actually write the book originally, but it's a huge honor anyway. All right, so we've got an arc rating balaclava. So in a Category 2 location, we could either use the hard hat with face shield, and I love these face shields from and the clothing and equipment from Oberon. I mean, Oberon. They were the ones that first came out with this, and they called it a true color gray. And it is a gray face shield as opposed to the yellow green face shield that came out first and was out forever. And then even the hoods that were so dark that it was just so difficult to see out of them. And so, but we do have an option for Category 2, one or the other. Balaclava, there was a little bit of revision in this. An arc-rated head protective fabric that protects the head, the neck, and the head, except for a small portion of the facial areas. And so in this particular balaclava, Billy has it pulled up over his nose, but it could be pulled down right below the nose. All right, so here's the thing. we're getting into a season that's getting cold. And so if you're out there working and it's cold and you feel like that you need to wear a balaclava, until you put your electrical equipment into an electrically safe work condition, you have to wear an arc-rated balaclava. Now, once your equipment is in an electrically safe work condition, you've gone through all the steps to put it into an electrically safe work condition and verify that it's there. Then once it's there, then you can take off your arc-rated arc-rated balaclava and put on your bunny balaclava to work in outside in the cold, but not until you put the equipment into an electrically safe work condition. An arc-rated balaclava has to be used with an arc-rated face shield when the back of the head is within the arc flash boundary. That's kind of a while ago I said you might have to, a hard hat with face shield and maybe an arc-rated balaclava. And so this label, the equipment label, the arc-rated arc flash boundary is 4 feet 5 inches. Is the back of your head going to be in the arc flash boundary? Yes, it is going to be within the arc flash boundary. I've seen labels, in fact, the closest arc flash boundary I have ever seen was 2 inches. Well, your back of your head's not going to be in the arc flash boundary when it's 2 inches or 6 or even 12 or so. An arc-rated hood can be used instead of an arc-rated face shield and balaclava. Arc-rated hood has to be used when the anticipated incident energy exceeds 12 calories. All right, here's Oberon's. This is their 65 calorie arc flash suit, the hood and the whole suit. They have clothing that goes all the way up to, or an arc flash suit up to 140 calories. PPE Category 3. Now we have the minimum category for PPE Category 3 is 25 calories. And other information on there, AN stands for as needed, AR as required, SR would be selection required. There's a little bit of additional or change. There's a footnote E now that wasn't there before, where it says leather footwear. In fact, it used to say heavy duty leather footwear, and the committee took out the words heavy duty. And so if you want to look at the footwear footnote, take a look at that after the webinar. We are on the right side. It did say the arc-rated gloves, rubber insulating gloves with leather protectors, selection required. That's the same as what it was, although those words weren't in that table before. High visibility apparel was added to the table. There was a footnote F added to this table, which we'll look at near the end of this webinar in a few minutes. Category 4, everything between 3 and 4 is exactly the same. The only difference is Category 3 is Category 4 turns to Category 4, and the 25 calories per square centimeter changed to 40 calories. So Category 4, the minimum arc rating for a Category 4, it has to be at least 40 cal. All right, so shock protection. I know so far we've talked about arc flash or arc rated PPE. We'll talk about shock a little bit. Again, this is not everything that's in 70E. This is we're just a very short webinar that Grace is providing for you for free, which is wonderful of Grace to do this. Employees shall wear rubber insulating gloves with leather protectors where there's a danger of hand injury from electric shock due to contact with energized electrical conductors or circuit parts. The rubber insulating gloves have to be rated for the voltage at which it's where the glove is going to be exposed. With shock, we have two boundaries. We have a limited approach boundary, which is the farthest. We have a restricted approach boundary, which is the closest. These boundaries are applicable where personnel are approaching exposed energized electrical conductors and circuit parts. Shock boundaries that are in table 130.4D, A for AC and B for DC. And shock boundaries, everything except 120 volt is based on phase to phase. And it's really very easy. Here's a drawing that I made representing the live conductor circuit part in the middle, and the closest boundary is the restricted approach boundary. Then we have the limited approach boundary. There are certain things that we have to do or not do at each of the boundaries before crossing them. This is a new table that was added to the 2021 edition of 70E. This contains maximum use voltages for AC and DC, as well as the minimum distances between the end of the rubber and the end of the leather. There has to be at least a minimum distance so that you're not going to have an arc over. So this is a new table. Now this table was, it could be easily found before, but it makes it easier that, okay, this is in 70E, makes it nice and easy to find. There's a footnote. It was a little bit of wording change on this. Rubber insulating gloves with leather protectors provide arc flash protection in addition to shock protection. Higher class rubber insulating gloves with leather protectors, because of the increased material thickness, provides increased arc flash protection. So if you're wearing rubber insulating gloves with leather protectors, you do not have to wear arc rated gloves. Now there are arc rated gloves out there, and but you don't have to wear an arc rated glove over a rubber glove. It's just the rubber glove with the leather protectors protects against arc flash as well. And there's no arc rating on the gloves like this. Layering, non-melting flammable fiber garments are permitted to be used as underlayers in conjunction with an arc rated garment in a layered system. A typical layering system might include cotton underwear, cotton shirt, trouser, arc-rated coverall. Specific tasks might call for additional arc-rated layers to achieve the required protection. This is an informational note under 130.7 C9A. All right, so sometimes I'll ask students in class, all right, I've got an arc-rated shirt. The shirt on the right is 8.7 calories per square centimeter. And if I'm going to be in front of equipment that has 8.8, would it be okay if I just put on a t-shirt underneath that shirt that's only 8.7? And the answer is no. Garments that are not arc rated shall not be permitted to use to increase the arc rating of a garment or of a clothing system. Now, do they have clothing systems out there? Yes, absolutely. Bulwark, I've seen on their catalog online that when you buy a certain t-shirt with a certain shirt, it increases, in fact, it increases the value of the arc rating more than just adding the two pieces together. So in this case, will a cotton t-shirt add something? Yes, but we cannot add anything to the arc rating of that outer layer shirt. If it is 8.7, the maximum that we can be in front of the prospective incident energy or for a piece of equipment would be what is that for the rating of that shirt, which in this particular case, this is my shirt and it's 8.7. A little bit, another couple of changes in the 2021 edition. Garments worn as outer layers over arc-rated clothing, such as jackets. And they added high visibility apparel or rainwear should also be made from arc-rated material. All right, so the outerwear also has to be made from arc-rated material. This is a bulwark jacket, rain jacket that is arc-rated. And so until we were going over the changes to make the 2021 edition of 70E, I was always under the assumption that whatever was on the outside had to be equal to or greater than the incident energy of the equipment you're standing in front of. Well, let's look at something else that was changed in the 2021 edition. This was added. The arc rating of outer layers worn over arc rated clothing as protection from elements or from other safety or for other safety purposes and that are not used as part of a layered system shall not be required to be equal to or greater than the estimated incident energy exposure. All right, so what this means, anything that you wear on the outside has to be arc rated, yes, absolutely, but it does not have to equal or exceed the arc rating of the piece of equipment that you're in front of. For example, the equipment I've got a label on a piece of equipment that is 8 calorie. I've got a shirt on, a regular shirt that is 8.7. All right, my shirt is good. I could wear this vest. This vest, this high-vis vest, is 4.9 calories per square centimeter. It is not 8, but it is arc rated. Now, this is a bulwark vest. I don't think they're making this vest anymore because they make shirts now that are just like this. They're high-vis shirt. I've got one. I wore it last week. Last Friday, I was teaching an electrical contractor in northwest Mississippi, and I was wearing that shirt. Of course, it was probably blinding through all the classroom portion, but when we did the hands-on portion, it was arc rated, so I didn't have to put on any coverall or anything because I was already wearing arc rated clothing. So, but your outer clothing, as long as it has an arc rating, does not have to equal or exceed the prospective arc rating of the equipment that you're in front of. All right, I'm Charles Miller. I'm out of Nashville, Tennessee, actually Lebanon, Tennessee. Lebanon is 30 minutes east of downtown Nashville. Lebanon, if you've never heard of Lebanon, Lebanon is the home of Cracker Barrel. Most people have heard of Cracker Barrel. And so let me before I get into the questions here, let me show you something else. All right, so a question, a while ago, I was talking about evidence of impending failure. All right, so I've got a disconnecting means. And looking at that disconnecting means, is there evidence of impending failure? And hopefully everybody is saying, yes, there is evidence of impending failure. All right, so what that means is in order to turn that disconnect on or off, then I would have to be wearing arc rated clothing. I'd have to be suited up. And so all right, this was a couple of years ago. About this time, a friend of mine saw this. As good as this looks, in real life, it looks even better. And it sounds pretty good, but in real life, it sounds like arcing and sparking. It sounds so real. A friend of mine saw this at Home Depot. It is a Halloween prop. It is operated by 3 AA batteries. And so this was Halloween a couple of years ago. I put this out, wore arc rated clothing, and I put this on LinkedIn. I put it on Facebook and got all kinds of comments. Somebody, of course, had to say, well, you're supposed to be wearing safety glasses. You should have in hearing protection. Yeah, but the voltage is 4.5 volts. And so, of course, I was doing it just for fun, but Anyway, this is, let me put up my contact information again. All right, let's maybe take a look at some of the questions. Don't know that we'll have time for all of them. One of the things that, and I wanted to also make sure you have my contact information. Feel free to email me with your question if we don't get to those, because I know we're running out of time. But make sure on an email, whenever you email, make sure you put your phone number, because sometimes it's just easier for me to call as opposed to just trying to email back and forth with getting enough information to answer your question. All right, well, okay, someone said the no doesn't guarantee an arc flash will never happen, but rather it is unlikely. And so, yeah, that is absolutely true. But as far as looking at the table, that gives you the idea, that tells you whether you need arc rated PPE or not. All right, don't you need to verify the absence of voltage? Yeah, this was a very short webinar. The equipment being in a condition that is a normal condition, that's just part of the many steps we have to go through and look at. As far as we absolutely have to go through the steps to verify the equipment and put the equipment into an electrically safe work condition. Okay, someone was asking about the Fluke meter. Can it be used for live testing under 1,000 volt? And this was the first time I saw this meter. This was my question as well. In fact, I only saw the very top of the meter. I didn't see that the meter had leads. And so my question, or I was about to write back and say, well, you cannot use this to test for the absence of voltage, or as a lot of people call it, live test, which is great. I like those terms. But this meter does have leads on it that you can use this as a regular voltage detector. In testing for the absence of voltage, you cannot use the fork because you have to test phase to phase and phase to ground. So absolutely, that was a good point brought up with that question. Rubber gloves, yeah, the rubber gloves have to be tested. We have to visually test these and air test them every time before using it, or at least once a day before using them. But insulated equipment has to be tested, and there's a table in 70E, and for rubber gloves, it is every 6 months. So it has to be sent off to be electrically tested. For shock to every 6 months, yes, that, again, very short webinar. Have me out to your facility to do a one-day webinar. You will hear all of this information, and you wouldn't have questions like this, but they're good questions. I don't have a problem with that. Testing again every 6 months. In general, the incident energies for 480 volt systems, higher or lower? That would be a question for an engineering company or an engineer who does arc flash studies. I have seen some 4160 volt systems with arc flash labels that the arc flash boundary was incredibly close. I didn't put the picture on here, but I've seen an arc flash label. I've seen a label, an equipment label, where the arc flash boundary was 235 feet away. Arc flash boundary 235 feet away. and the incident energy, I think over 1,300 calories. And you're going, and that was an incredible label. I do have a picture of that. But also with that label, the engineering company was told not to use the 2-second rule. So the length of time that it takes to open the circuit up completely, 2.5 minutes. And it would just be incredible to think somebody's going to stand there 2.5 minutes while that is arcing and sparking. So, but as far as giving you an answer on higher or lower than 4, I don't know the answer to that. I've got an opinion, but I'm not going to throw that one out there. Does adding arc rated PPE increase the rate? No. You've got well, if it's a layered system, it does. The question was if you've got an arc rated piece of clothing on that's 8 and you put a 4 on it, does that make it a 12? Not unless you bought it as a completed and tested system. And in fact, if you bought it as a completed and tested system, instead of, if you've got a 4 and an 8, instead of 12, it might be 18 or 20 calories because of that air gap that's in between the clothing. But you cannot do that yourself. It has to be a system that you bought. If I get asked if any old leather, it doesn't, I don't know of any requirements that it has to be a specific type of leather, but you have to be careful in that, make sure that there is enough leather or the rubber that goes beyond the leather. I've seen a company that had gloves that were using a glove with a long leather, and the rubber was not nearly as long. So therefore, the leather went past the rubber. That is a violation. So I don't know of any particular rule that it has to be of a certain type of leather. Do arc flash boundaries have to be marked? We have to put out barriers for arc flash boundaries. So let's see. We're kind of run out of time here, haven't we? I'm going to go ahead and if, no, I didn't get to all of the questions. Again, feel free to write me and put your number there, and it's probably easier for me to pick up the phone and call you back, and connect with me on LinkedIn. And we appreciate you joining the webinar today. Nick, do you have anything else?
No, thank you all for attending and asking questions. We got lots of questions today. It's excellent. Hopefully we'll be able to follow up with a lot of you if you didn't get answered. And we will be sending out an email within the next few days here with a link to this presentation on demand. You can watch it again if you missed something, or share it with anyone you'd like. And as Charles mentioned earlier, we'll also be sending out a PDF link of his presentation. So we hope that we will close it out. Thanks again for everyone coming out here, and thank you, Charles.
Thank you.